Hi, my name is Ny.karle, and I did my research project on the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement was a long battle during the 50s and 60s, fought by African Americans to finally demand social justice and obtain equal rights in the United States. Despite the fact that the Civil War nullified bondage, extraordinary prejudice and segregation towards African Americans proceeded. So, in the middle of the 20th century, African Americans and allying whites began to fight for equality that lasted approximately 2 decades, sparking events that would totally change the United States and the lives of African Americans forever. The reason I chose this topic is because it's a big part of African American history, and besides the abolishment of slavery, the events that transpired in the civil rights movement was the biggest step towards the America we know today. And how the Civil War contributes to African American history is that during this time segregation was fought against and eliminated, and it also brought the African American community together, and they found their voice sticking up for each other's rights. There were a couple of major points I found during my research. Rosa Parks was a major point of the civil rights movement. Some even looked up to her as the mother of the civil rights movement. She was most known for being arrested for not giving up her seat and moving from the front of the bus to the back of the bus because a white person wanted her seat. This event sparked a war on segregation and the famous boycott of the Montgomery bus system. She also had been an active member in the NAACP and was a very seasoned activist, both temperamentally and organizationally. The next major point was Martin Luther King. He was perhaps the biggest activist and most remembered person from the civil rights movement. He's mostly remembered for his nonviolence approach he took while protesting. He also gave his famous I Have a Dream speech at the March of Washington, which was a peaceful protest for jobs and freedom for African Americans. The Civil Rights Act of 1957 was a major social liberties enactment since Reconstruction. It formally allows federal prosecution of anyone trying to prevent another from voting and making commission for investigating voter fraud. Brown versus the Board of Education was a very important Supreme case during the Civil Rights Movement. It was one of the first steps legally towards desegregation in schools. In 1955, the court made a decision, and the judge, Earl Warren, stated that separate but equal has no place, as segregated schools are inherently unequal. The court ruled in Brown's favor for robbing them of their rights and ensured by the 14th Amendment. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is perhaps the biggest win of the civil rights movement. It officially overrode the power of the Jim Crow laws, which sustained that racial segregation was separate but equal. It was President Kennedy who wanted Congress to present a civil rights bill, and after his assassination, President Lyndon Johnson helped the bill to pass. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, religion, color, sex, or national origin. How all this research impacts me was that this research brings all the issues African Americans face to light and helps me appreciate and question the America I live in today. I found in-depth details about the many events that transpired during the civil rights movement, and now I understand how big the African Americans' battle for equality and freedom is. It's clear to me now why it's important to challenge prejudices and keep fighting against the system. This battle is far from over, and it's up to the African American community to keep standing up because we lose decades of progress if we don't. The civil rights movement was a long battle that opened many doors for the African American community and continues to motivate the community in modern times. Thank you, Mr. E. That's it.